Guys, this story is not getting the attention that I think it should because it's viewed as a smokescreen to what the Niners eventually did, which was draft Michael Williams. This is Jeremy Fowler from Wednesday. And I think everyone saw it. You probably saw it and went, oh, everyone bit on the Niners pump fake that they were going to draft one of these other guys when they really wanted Michael. This is Jeremy Fowler Wednesday. I talked to a few teams picking high who wondered whether San Francisco would move up for Tetairoa, McMillan, or Colston Loveland. Now, we know what happened afterwards. They draft Michael. They do the press conference. John Lynch says, I tried to trade up for him. Kyle Shanahan says, I told my family the night before this is the guy they wanted. And I think all of that stuff is true. But I also think what happens is the narrative after you pick whoever you pick is just 100%. That's the only guy we wanted. When I think we shouldn't ignore what Fowler's writing here about Tetairoa, McMillan, or Colston Loveland. You know, the assumption was that if the Niners liked tight end, they'd like the one that was like Kittle. But maybe it would make sense that they would like the one that isn't like Kittle, the one who's more of the dynamic pass catcher because you already got the blocker in Kittle. Because the theory's been, they were going to, maybe if they drafted Tyler Warren, they're going to move on from Kittle. That's why the extension came after. But that's a separate thing. Remember, one thing that's gone around the internet on Friday morning, Thursday night, I don't remember exactly, time moves super speed on the internet, is the clip of Sean McVay showing all the Rams the highlights of Davante Adams. Remember, the Niners apparently were interested in Davante, and Davante said he heard through somebody, probably the agent, they weren't willing, they wanted to pay wholesale. So the Niners were interested in adding a receiver, just not at an expensive price. Well, where can you add a tall, contested catch receiver? I think like T-Mac is a lock 1,400 yards this year. Where can you add that cheap if you can't add it in free agency? You can do it in the draft. And, the Niners have not had a big spending off season. I think we get lulled to sleep with them sometimes and forget that they're the team that swoops in on Christian McCaffrey. They're the team that, when they believe in a guy, swoops in on Trent Williams. He was the only option they had, I guess. But they make trades. They do things. They move up. Sometimes they're crazy. They trade 3-1s just to have the right to pick between Trey Lance and Mac Jones. I don't think we should ignore this as just a smokescreen. That's my point. Well, what does that mean now? Well, it means now that we should just always have our antennas up, never get lulled to sleep. Robert Saleh on Thursday said, this is just the way the draft board fell. And when he said that, I think I think what he means is like in the later rounds where you keep thinking, well, aren't the Niners going to draft offensive line here? Or aren't they going to get an offensive guy here? And then they just went defense again. And he said there were times we had an offensive guy ranked higher on the board. This is, by the way, I've been a head coach and I can say things now, Robert Saleh. I wonder if pre-head coach Robert Saleh says what he said yesterday, which was, we had some offensive guys rated higher on the board than some of the defensive guys we took. And then those offensive guys got drafted. And then the defensive guy was the highest guy on our board. So we took that guy. All right. That's what he said, that they would have wanted other guys than the guys they drafted. And then those guys got taken. So he didn't play the every guy we got is the guy we wanted. But of course, he's not talking about pick 11 there. He's talking about pick 211 or whatever. But you keep that in mind. And I wonder strongly, and I think you should always wonder this, when a team says, this is our guy. It's like, I believe you love that guy, but I don't think he's the only guy. You could have drafted another guy and been very happy. Or maybe there was a debate between this guy and that guy. The best edge setter in the draft. That's what John Lynch said about Michael Williams the night they drafted him. So that's critical to them. Building their defensive line. It's what they've done before. Critical to them. This absolutely fits their MO. It fits the narrative that they went into. I am really hating the word narrative lately, but it does fit that narrative that I've been hating it for a long time, that they went in with this plan. It's easy to build that. They went in with this plan and look at the plan they executed. Or it just kind of fell that way. And all those pieces, when we look at them after they fit together, look like a team who just went all in on defense. But I think even Robert Saleh said yesterday, that is not necessarily the way they intended to do it. It just looks that way now. And now it just looks like Michael Williams was the only guy they could have drafted. To me, great pick. I like the pick. If they drafted Tetairoa McMillan, it would have felt crazy. Like you need another. You just drafted a receiver in the first round last year. I think we should be on alert for what happens if Brandon Ayuk has a nice year and Brandon Ayuk looks healthy. Does that lock Brandon Ayuk into the Niners forever, or does that just make him trade bait again for somebody else? Watch that relationship. I mean, that's going to be a big part of everything this year. Not just him being healthy for Brock Purdy. How productive is he? What do the receiver contracts look like a year from now? And is he a movable piece then? Bridges burned, bridges repaired. We'll find out. But I think Tetairoa McMillan would have fit really well into this offense. I think he would have been a great target for Brock Purdy. I think we're constantly looking at receivers going, you know what the Niners need is a really fast guy that can take the top off the defense. Well, maybe they don't ever really have that guy because they don't prioritize that guy. This guy is a different type of guy. This guy is a first round Juwan Jennings. So I think a lot of people are choosing to ignore this as the Niners, and you could. I mean, I don't want to. It could be that the Niners just did a great job of smoke screening teams into thinking Tetairoa McMillan and Colston Loveland were their guys, and the reason that they discussed trade options with Carolina at 8. The reason that didn't happen is because Carolina's like, I kind of think you're going to take Tetairoa McMillan. That's our guy. I don't want to move back to 11 and not get Tetairoa McMillan. So that could be. But I think there's more truth here than not. This goes back. I say this all the time, and I stand by it. Back to the Mac Jones. They didn't draft him. All the way up to Diana Rossini talking about offers for Kittle the other day. There's always just a little more. Not always. There is often a little more in the backstory to what gets put in print by some of these reports. So as everybody else reads this and goes, it was nothing. I don't. I think it was something. How much of a something? We'll never know. But I think it was something.